Hi, welcome to Mom to Wife Plus Life. This podcast is all about motherhood and life, and of course, everything in between. So if you're ready for some hot mess topics, rants, and life lessons, let's dive right in.
Hey, mom friends, wherever or however you're listening to this podcast right now, you should take a moment and check out Stitcher. Those of you listening on Stitcher already get why. For those of you who don't know it, Stitcher is a free podcast app for iPhone and Android and home to over 260,000 podcasts, including Mom to Life Plus Life. Wow. Stitcher also has smart recommendations, playlists, a car mode, and even a sleep timer. While the Stitcher app is free to use, they also offer a premium subscription service called Stitcher Premium that has exclusive bonus episodes from top shows, exclusive shows from top hosts, and ad-free listening for all for $4.99 a month or $34.99 a year. Pretty cheap. So, if you're into podcasts like Mom to Wife Plus Life, comedy, true crime, pop culture, sports, music, those types of things, to Stitcher.com/premium to sign up today and use promo code WifeLife. Again, go to Stitcher.com/premium and use the promo code WifeLife on the
Erin Reibel here today, and we're going to be talking about the work-life balance and harmonizing all of those things together to make you a better mom, a better parent, and just kind of find some balance. Erin, would you like to introduce yourself today?
Sure, thank you. I'm so excited to be here and to talk with you this morning. Well, so I'm currently a leadership coach and a pastor, so that's what I currently do. But my journey started a lot earlier. So it started, really with the mix of having children and trying to find a career. But within the capacity of leadership coaching, I help women become more confident in how they lead, and I really focus on women being authentic. So that's sort of knowing who they are, that piece of self-awareness, being vulnerable, so living from that self-awareness and from those core values of belief so that they can be adaptable and create that impact and change that they want to create within their community, within their family, within their workplace, within their world. So that's what I do right now, but that has morphed as it has for a lot of women who are experiencing sort of raising kids and jumping in and out of the workplace. I love the image, I think it's Sheryl Sandberg, that she offers of women's careers often like a jungle gym. So there's that piece of like going up and going sideways and sometimes hopping off the jungle gym and then going back on to a different place. So it's a lot more malleable than what perhaps we think traditionally of a male trajectory in their career.
Nice. I love it. Can you tell me a little bit more about like the ministry side, like the ministry consultant type?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I felt a calling to ministry probably back in college, but I could probably see like sparks of that earlier, even back into high school. And the calling, everyone has a calling in their life, and that calling can sometimes be in just one direction, sometimes it can be in multiple directions. For me, my calling was to go and do the work of a pastor in a church. So that's a specifically designated work. So, of ordering the life of a congregation and of managing the life of a church. Not that all ministry within there, everyone can do it, everyone can be part of the ministry, but that is a specific one for ordering that life of a church. So I felt that I prayed a lot about it and what God was calling me to do. I wasn't sure that was really the direction I personally wanted to go in, but I kept hearing that sort of stirring within my heart that God was calling me to that place. After I graduated throughout my college career, I met with my priest. I was a member of the Episcopal Church at the time, and he continued to confirm that calling within me. And when I got out of college, I got married, and my priest recommended that I focus on my marriage, which I did for a year. And then I went back, still working towards that calling. And he talked to me some about about having children and being a pastor. So within the Episcopal Church, they've ordained women for many years. There's many denominations that don't, but the Episcopal Church does. But even with that allowance, there was a concern that being a mother and raising children was incompatible with being a pastor, that you couldn't do those two things. Now, that would never come up for a man. They would never ask a man if they could be a father and a pastor, but it did come up for me as a woman. So a lot of my career and my focus on being a pastor has really been shaped around this idea of having two calls, a calling to be a mother and to raise kids, and a calling to serve God in whatever capacity God has called me to. And I've found that through my time, I've really had to talk a lot about what that looks like in that dual call that I actually think everyone has. I think everyone has more than one calls in their life, but in particular in this time and in this place, there's a lot of emphasis now on how you can have a call to a career, to the ministry, and that calling to motherhood. So how do you balance the two of those? So that has really shaped my perspective from day one of entering the adult world. As it continued, I actually ended up leaving the Episcopal Church and went into the Methodist Church, and continued to be shaped by that idea of, raising kids and being sort of in the practicalities of that, while also looking at this career in the ministry and attending to school for that and all of those things. So it's an interesting balance of really big theological concepts with also just the practical realities of feeding kids and changing diapers and, being up late at night for night feedings and all of the things.
Yeah, all of those things. It's really interesting because I actually grew up in an Episcopal church for a while. So I do understand the teachings and all of those things. We did have women leaders, leadership leaders. And it was kind of interesting because, they were not really present in their mom life, but more into the church life. So when I got a chance to be able to do the youth group for my church at that time, it was pretty cool to see that different perspective and the other side of it. So that's really interesting that you did say something like that. So it just brought me back to my childhood for 2 minutes.
Well, it's fascinating to me, when we hear preachers preach, they often talk about their life experience. So they talk about whatever their job was and wherever they were before or all of those pieces. And I often, when I preach, talk about my experience as a mother, because that has been my other job. And yet somehow we discount that perspective. And yet that's a perspective that a lot of people can jump into. And even people who aren't mothers still have been mothered. They understand that role. And so it's interesting to me, the balance. I've had many male pastors tell me to not speak about being a mother and not speak about the experience of raising children, because I guess it's deemed sort of not theological enough. And yet, sometimes it's totally okay for men to speak about their previous work experience or their life outside the church. So it's an interesting balance we have there. And I think sometimes we discount the role of motherhood as being a real deal profession, a real thing that takes, a lot of effort, and you develop a lot of skills. And it's something you can dedicate your life to, and women do dedicate their life to. And yet somehow we see it as not being academic enough or worthy enough or all of those things. And I think that's really disappointing. You see it even in the workplace. Being a mom is not something that workplaces value, even though, my goodness, all of my skills I have learned from motherhood.
So we as moms are supposed to have this amazing ability to multitask. So I know it's really funny. But somehow we're always felt that we're not doing enough or we're doing too much. How would you help on the leadership side and the ministry side to help parents and our fellow moms out there to find the balance of work, home, and self-care? What tips would you give, and how would you guide them, I guess? Or what advice would you say?
Right. So I've got some broad ideas, but I want to offer, just a huge introduction that I really believe all of this is very personal. So what works for me is not going to work for you and is not going to work for, the mom next door. So all of this it's very tailored to how our own rhythm and routines work. I tend to be a little bit more okay with a lot of chaos, but there's a lot of people who aren't. And so some of my methods for self-care aren't going to work with someone who doesn't like the chaos level that I like.
Yeah.
So that's, when I talk about authenticity, that's really where I want to hone in on for individual women. What's good for you? What feels right for you? What are your values? What are your beliefs that are really going to guide you? Because once you can figure out what those core pieces are, then you can start designing a life that's going to make you more fruitful, more connected to that center and core. It's going to help you to feel more purposeful, and it's going to help you to find those places of rest. So that, to me, that first piece is really knowing yourself, knowing what you value, knowing how you want to live out those values, and then you start looking at your life, and does your life match what those pieces are? So to me, it starts as a very personal journey. Now, that being said, we live in a world that really values busyness and being in a hurry. And I can't remember there's a pastor that Dallas Willard, he talks about hurried sickness. And I think that a lot of people struggle with this. I think a lot of moms struggle with this as well. Hurried sickness, it's more than being busy. It's that constant sort of low-level anxiety that you need to be doing more. And it's sort of a soul anxiety. We all have moments of busyness, and there's seasons that, are super intense, and then they die down. But that hurried sickness never dies down. It sort of stays as that pit of fear, anxiety, and stress that's just low-level brimming there. It comes from us not having enough silence, not having enough solitude. It comes from us not being able to prioritize. It comes from all of the constant barrage of, requests and things to do, and sorting through all of the information that comes at us. And I think that our culture very much struggles with hurry sickness. And the solution to that is to find these places of rest and silence and solitude in our life. In Christian world, we would talk about it as Sabbath. So for me as a mom, I also have to rethink about what that looks like. So the idea that I would get a whole day of rest is like, I have no idea how that would happen. Like, I really,
yeah.
that's like totally, I have 4 kids. Like, even on days where I'm not working, like I'm working at like the idea that, I wouldn't cook dinner or be doing laundry or emptying the dishwasher. Like, that's just a totally foreign concept. I do like to think of Sabbath windows. So, or rest windows, depending on what your faith background or spiritual background is, these little windows in your day and in your week where you are entering into that silent solitude rest place. And I think this can be unique for each person, but making sure that you are building that into your daily life is going to help with that practice of rest, and is going to help sort of balance the busyness as well and the hurried sickness that we experience.
Yeah, I have a lot of that. I don't think it's like, I honestly think it's just part of who I am now, sadly to say.
Well, you know what? I agree. I mean, I think it becomes such a part of ourselves that we don't even recognize that it's there, and it feels unnatural for it to not be there.
Yeah.
I'm in this season. I was full-time work, so 60 to 70 hours a week, and now I've dropped back to part-time work and building my own business, and so it's not as many hours. And it took me, it took me like 3 months of being like, shouldn't I be doing something? What else needs to be done? Why am I going to bed before, 1 a.m.? Like, that's not normal. When in fact, like, that actually is like, that is sort of normal and should be more healthy. Like, but you get yourself into this pattern of like, of ramping it up and, just tightening all the gears, that you forget that, like, maybe it doesn't have to be this way.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of moms out there, including myself, have this. And it's just like I said, it's our natural, like, who we are now. It's just one of those things where you are always busy. It's just not, there's no downtime. And when you do have downtime, you're worried, like, what am I forgetting? Because you have a laundry list of things to do. And that's just being a mom. Let's talk about the work life. So you do work. You said you work part-time right now. How is that working with, like, being a mom of 4 kids and, like, is your husband supportive of it and all of that?
Yeah, so I have done a mix of everything throughout my career. So I have worked full-time and had kids. My husband went back to school to get his master's, so he stayed home with our son when he was little, and we did reverse hours, so I worked nights and he worked days. I've done part-time from 5 to 10 to 20 to 30. I've done full-time at 60, 70. And now I'm back sort of down to part-time. And to me, it's a constant balancing act. My husband is great. He's supportive, but he goes to work, the regular 9 to 5, 8 to 6, and doesn't think about having his phone on in case there's an emergency. Doesn't think about the fact that, like, also during the day, he's got to go buy groceries for dinner. And by the way, what are we cooking for dinner tonight? Doesn't think about, the outfit that needs to be washed because they need it for their track meet the next day, all of those things that are constantly going through my mind. And to me, like, I've never been able to separate it out. So I've never been able to have, like, the box of this is work time and this is home time or this is mom time. To me, it all intermingles. And so, again, back to that, authenticity piece. So for me, it works really well to look at each day as sort of its own unique beast. And to prioritize what needs to happen that day, between family and work. So that's how I handle it. I have a running to-do list, and it's a mix of everything. And then I just prioritize what those tasks are. I do like to take a broader look at my seasons. So there's seasons that are way more intense at work. When I was working full-time in a church, all of December and Easter were really intense. And so I knew those were going to require extra hours at work, but I tried to balance that with a much slower January. So I didn't, I tried to take on less during that January time because I was balancing out the amount of time I had spent at work during December. So, I tried to look seasonally at those pieces in addition to just balancing the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm not working like in a church or anything with the busy season, but the holidays, Christmas shopping and then birthdays and then Thanksgiving, all those. It's the busy season. Now it's slowing down, which thank God, because I need a break. Financially, one, and mentally, I just can't keep thinking of buying anything more. So that is, that's idealistic. And I think everybody has that kind of busy season, especially during those times of the year. And like working, you're right. Like, I'm constantly mixing and mingle like outfits. Like, okay, well, I have to do laundry. I have to take out something for dinner. I have to, make sure this is clean, that's clean, or did I sign that permission slip? And when is that due? And, my husband gets to like kind of take the back seat a little bit. Not saying that he doesn't do his share, but, he has a more relaxed mindset and thinking versus me, which is, like I said, the multitasking of moms. Like, we do a million and one things, and I feel like our husbands and our partners don't really kind of give us the credit for it. So the work life, since we're constantly doing this like multitasking and thinking, do you honestly think that, because I know we had talked about this before we actually hit record today, do you think like the workforce is designed for moms? in that sense. Because, I mean, if we're constantly having this on switch and constantly this busy go schedule with motherhood, do you think the workforce is designed for us in a sense?
I mean, and I think the answer for most different fields is no. It's definitely designed with a male career trajectory, so like that sort of ladder idea, and it's definitely designed with a male sort of mindset in place as well. So I did a doctoral paper on women's leadership within the church, and I looked at not just at church leadership, but also in some other fields, so academia, doctors, business professionals, and of course, in most of those fields, you don't find women rising to the top. However, in all of those fields, they would say that they support women, they support mothers, all of those pieces. What I have found is that it's systematic. So the systems that we have in place support a male lifestyle and a male trajectory over a woman's. And that is where I think the real change needs to occur, and that's going to have to happen field by field by field. And it's dismantling some of those systems that we just think are natural. And I think that's what's really hard about it, is that we can't imagine, we're just starting to imagine what it would look like if we didn't have 9 to 5 work, if people did more, project-based work, or if they did it on their own schedule. We're talking a little bit about more flexible hours, but that is changing like a huge mindset of work is 9 to 5. And you show up there, and it doesn't matter if you don't have anything to do, that's still being at work. So we're starting to see some of those pieces that we've really held on to for a long time change, but that is going to just take a lot of time. For me personally, I'd love to see us recognize these gaps in women's resumes and where they're staying home with their kids. I'd love to see us recognize that as actual work experience. But there's still there's the bad mom, good dad phenomenon. So a mom who goes back to work is perceived negatively, whereas a dad who's at work is perceived as more loyal and stable and dependable. So you still have some of these deep-seated perspectives that are part of our culture that women are fighting up against. And it does make it frustrating and difficult.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I honestly think it is kind of one of those things where I really do wish that the gaps of employment on a woman's resume would be considered as work experience, because when you do go to an interview, the first question is what skills do you bring to the job? And it's I have multitasking skills, I have listening skills, I have, all these skills that apply to motherhood. So, and they are work skills. So, I mean, I do wish that would be considered as work, or even volunteer work. I would be okay with that at that point, because when you do volunteer, you're still applying your skills, your work skills to that. So my thing is if they're going to take volunteer experience, why not take motherhood experience as well?
Right.
So.
Well, it's interesting. I was reading one stat, and actually putting, PTA, volunteer experience, works against you on your resume. And that's often, a lot of moms are plugged in to their school PTAs because that's where they're putting their hours. And if you put that on your resume, it actually works against mothers, which is just, it's just the way we are perceiving women's work and women's roles right now, that somehow this isn't as valuable as other things, even though it requires a lot of the same skills that people are building in their, out of the home career life. So it's really frustrating. And I think about the skills I've learned here at home, from organizational skills, and you're right, listening skills, conflict management. I excel at conflict management. I have 4 children. I'm really great at conflict management. But we just those don't count. And, it's even hard to talk about them within an interview unless you're talking to someone who has been there and done that and is willing to look at those as real skills, that are equal to any skill that perhaps a man would have learned in the workplace. So it's difficult and frustrating.
Yeah, I honestly, when I go to an interview, I kind of and this is I mean, I think this is kind of a good tip for moms as, like I assess like the situation. I look at the desk and I see if there's photos of kids or anything like that. So I'm like, okay, well, they're a mom and I can apply my motherhood skills to some of my work experience and they would understand. But if I don't see any like pictures of kids or like, you know, them being married or anything, I just don't talk about my motherhood at all. Like I don't even bring up those skills. I just use my work related skills, which I feel is kind of, you know, like hurting against me a little bit.
Right.
So I think that's a helpful tip for moms. I mean, it could be working against you or not, but I think, you know, if it's a mom to mom, they kind of understand and they kind of somewhat get it, you know, like, oh yeah, I do that too. And if you're a great multitasker and, you know, you can handle a million projects at once and you're good, you know, type of thing. So totally understand that.
Yeah, I think you've got to feel them out, and I do that as well in interviews. I'll throw out, I'll throw out a statement about my family and see how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
Something really innocuous. For me with 4 kids, I'm really comfortable with chaos. So if it's something that you really have to think on your feet, I can think on my feet. And so sometimes I'll throw that out as sort of as a joke and see how that lands. And if it lands really well, then I know that I can talk a little bit more about that. And if it sort of falls flat, then I know like, alrighty, well, that's not my go-to place. I need to figure out another way in. So
yeah.
No, I totally agree. You gotta look at your audience and decide.
Right. Sometimes I feel like it's like, you know, the workforce is still stuck in like the 1950s, 1960s, where like you are able to have the careers for women and stuff like that, but it's kind of like we don't want you to exceed and excel because you do have to be a mom and all of those like double standard things. I read on Facebook the other day, it was kind of like a little short like meme or something like that, I believe. And it was like, you know, they tell you to like social media and like social standards tell you to go to work, but then you're shamed for going to work, and they tell you to be a mom and, you know, to co-sleep and all those things, but then you're shamed for doing that. It's like you can never win, you know? So
Right.
I just feel like, you know, women, we kind of need to, and moms out there, we kind of need to like, you know, support one of another in that field at least, or in that sense. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think that's definitely true. It's hard. Like, it's really hard. I think we do need to support each other. I think we also need to look at some of the positive pieces that are undergirding this as well. So because women are in and out, because they're on this sort of juggle gym of career, it means that they're very adaptable. And what I love hearing in women, especially some of the women I work with, they'll talk about their skills, and then we'll try to figure out what that can be applied to within the workplace. Whereas I think men often are a career, right? I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, whatever that is. Women can talk about, I can multitask, I'm good at prioritizing, I'm really great at listening, I care deeply about people. And then they can sort of meld that into a whole bunch of different careers. So women's ability to recreate themselves is so cool, and it is one of the silver linings to to this cloud that we're talking about, that they can, and I think ultimately that leads to a more satisfactory life as well. So when you can identify beyond just a particular career or profession, and you can talk more about who you are as a person. So I like to help women feel more confident about their leadership skills. Well, that can happen. I can do that at a bank. I can do that at a hospital. I can do that as a coach. But that deep sense, that's my core coming out, like my core values, my core beliefs. And then that allows me to adapt to a whole bunch of different environments. But I'm still staying true to who I am. So it can lead to that deep sense of fulfillment and purpose, which is really cool. And you're seeing women really embrace that. I love that you're seeing so many women do these solo entrepreneur pieces. I love these sort of side hustles that women are doing, because I think that is just such cool creative work, whether it's blogging or writing or starting these side businesses or podcasting, right?
Yeah.
It's so cool to see all of this creative stuff that's coming out. I think of this feeling of stuckness within our workplace. And so women are adapting and finding these creative outlets, which is, so cool. I think it's a really neat thing that we're embracing in our culture. Again, it's, the silver lining there, but there are some really cool things that are happening.
Well, I think that women are kind of just fed up with corporate world and the rules, and so they're creating their own corporate rules, their own businesses and their own way. So I do applaud women who have side hustles and creating women-led businesses and things like that. Nothing against men, but I just find it really cool because we are moms and we would like to have that career path too.
Yeah. So
this is the point of the show where I turn the mic over to you and you can ask me any questions that you would like to ask me.
Oh my goodness! Well, tell me a little bit about your career experience of balancing raising kids and work.
So I only have one kid right now, and it's a handful. I will say that. She's one, but she's 3 in 1. So we're in the tween phase right now, as I call it. I feel it's too young for that, but she's in that self. I need to be independent, kind of don't tell me what to do type of thing. I recently stopped working, and my husband actually is working right now full time. His job has a better pay schedule and work schedule, I guess time schedule, as we can say, for our family to work. Usually we have seasons where I work and he doesn't, and he works and I don't. So it just kind of works for our family in the season of whatever season we're in. Not saying that I won't go back to work, but, we just have to kind of adjust our schedules and make it work for our family. So that's something that I promote, and I say to women, you just kind of have to find your balance between your home because sometimes it's not the time for you to work. Sometimes you kind of have to take the back seat and take care of the house and, let your husband do it, or, let your husband take care of the house and you go to work type of thing. So it's just one of those kind of give-take relationships. So I have a crazy schedule because I have a lot of appointments, and, my daughter has dentists, doctors, and, school plays, PTA things, school functions. And then my husband is also a full-time student right now as well in school. So it's he has to have, time to work for school. And so I have to kind of take the kid and do things with her so that dad has his time to work on his studies. So it's a lot of balancing act, I guess you would say. I never feel bad about it. I never feel I'm doing more, but sometimes I do have my burned out days and I just don't want to do anything. I will say that I'm only human. So our balance is pretty good. But I've been working since I was 12, so I can jump back into the workforce no problem. It's something I've always been able to do. I've done babysitting. I've worked for the Salvation Army, doing counseling for children for the summer and, spring breaks type of thing. I also worked for the YMCA at that time. I've worked in dental offices. I've worked pretty much in every field. So, I'm pretty adaptable, like we were talking about earlier. So I feel like my skills being a mom kind of helped me do that because I can jump back in okay, we're doing this, let's do this type of thing. So I just, those are my backgrounds, and now I'm doing podcasting, and I'm creating a voice for moms, just kind of sharing the narrative that we all have this crazy, chaotic life, but there is some balance and there is some normalcy to it.
So you talked about burnout. What do you do on those burnout days? How do you recharge?
I actually just take time for myself. I literally tell my family I'm not doing anything. I kind of have to put my foot down a little bit and just be I'm not doing that. I'm not. I have to kind of do that in order to recharge, because if I just say, okay, well, I'll do this, I'm not taking care of myself. I'm not recharging, So sometimes my husband does have to be like Mr. Mom. And that's perfectly okay. Sometimes it has to be that way.
Yeah. So what do you like? What's your favorite activity to do on those days? What do you do to recharge?
I'm really guilty at watching like bad, horrible reality TV shows. So I watch like The Housewives and things like that, and I just lay in bed with my favorite snack, and sometimes I'll give direction to my husband and be like, yeah, that needs to be done, but I don't physically do it. So, I mean, I take time to enjoy what I like to do. And I think that's important. Sometimes I'll like do a facial at the same time, like put on one of those like quick, like 10-minute masks that you buy at like Walmart or something. So I'll do that, or like I'll paint my nails while watching my show. I'll just take time to do something for me.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the biggest challenge facing moms these days?
Balance. I think what I've seen and heard so far, doing this podcasting thing is, having a good support system. If you don't have the support, it's kind of really hard, and it's kind of, sometimes your self-care takes a backseat for a long time, and I really don't like to see that with women, because we lose that. We forget how to take care of ourselves. But that's what I see with moms is like they're finding good support systems, whether that be a friend, a spouse, your own parents, cousins, mom groups, things like that. I really feel like that's the biggest struggle, is like having the support systems, having like that community of where, you have someone taking care of you and telling you like, hey, do you need help? And offering that help. Because normally we don't ask for it until like someone sees us like extremely burnt out and like basically losing our minds.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think we end up sort of disconnected from ourselves, right? We end up so far from ourselves that sometimes we don't even know who we are.
Yeah. It's bad. And like I promote self-care a lot. Like just take 5 minutes. Like 5 minutes will do wonders. I mean, it's not much, but 5 minutes is 5 minutes that you're not thinking or doing anything. You're actually doing something for yourself, and then eventually 5 minutes becomes 10, and then 15, and then maybe an hour, maybe it's a day without the kids. It just gradually gets there because you're realizing, oh, I like that 5 minutes. I like that 10 minutes, you gradually increase it.
Yeah. I find that sometimes women don't know what to do in those 5 minutes. Or you know what I mean? Like they don't know what to do at that time because they're so disconnected from who they are that they have no idea even what they like anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's such a process of self-discovery.
It is. And sometimes you just have to, in that 5 minutes, maybe you sit down and actually think about what is it that you actually like to do. Maybe that's what it takes, just reconnecting to yourself for 5 minutes. That's self-care,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Do you have any more questions for me, or?
I don't think I have any more questions. Is there anything else you would add?
No, not really. Just, take care of yourself, ladies, and, it's okay. Everybody struggles. I mean, it's not unnormal. It's the walk of life. You're a mom, and motherhood is chaotic. It's not perfect. And yeah, that's why I do this, to show that everybody's different, and everybody may seem like they have it together, but we really don't. And, we're struggling to find the balance all the time. So.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I agree.
So this is the point where I ask my guests to share 3 random facts about themselves. It could be literally anything from I love salt to I love bubble baths. Do you have 3 random facts about yourself that the audience can connect with you?
Sure. So my goal for the past 2 years has been to read 100 books. And I had 1 year where I got to 97. Last year I was at 84. So this year is going to be my year to reach 100 books. So I'm at 10 so far this month, and I'm going to keep chugging away. So it's so close. So close. So that's when I read a lot. I love reading, and I read a lot of different stuff. So I'm a pretty broad reader. I mean, I'll read almost anything. Let's see, my next rant in fact, when I was in high school, I played basketball, but I was so lacking in aggression that my parents actually paid me $20 if I would just take a shot. Any shot, it didn't matter. And I'll tell you, in a whole season, I earned $40. How is that like? That's awful. So yeah, that wasn't. I was a great bench warmer though. Like I really excel at warming the bench. Third piece, I love to cook a lot. And that actually started from having to feed my family. It was one of those passions that's come from, having from just a necessity. And I love cooking different things. I love cooking for people. I really like knowing how things are made from scratch. So I go through phases of like making my own broth for like a year, or making all of our own bread. It dies away. Like you can't keep it. No, I can't sustain that. But I'll go through these phases and the kids are like, why don't we have any like sliced bread? I'm like, well, we're making our bread this month. And you're like, oh my goodness. Why are we? But I really enjoy cooking, and I like seeing how it's done, and I like seeing if I can make things better than how they're sort of being mass produced. Like I said, it doesn't always last forever, but I really do enjoy cooking a lot.
Nice. I love it. So I just have a quick question. For the books, do you do audible books, or do you just read physical hardback, paperback books?
I read Kindles. I read hard books. I read a mixture. I go through seasons where I only read on my Kindle, and then I go through seasons where I only read books. Where I only read books. I only read the hardcover. So I have a whole. It doesn't bother me. Okay. And I do audiobooks too. I love audiobooks as well. So, all the things.
Nice. I love it. Well, Erin, thank you so much for coming on today and recording with me in today's episode and talking about all things, especially motherhood and work life. Do you have any last words for the listeners today?
Oh my goodness. I would just say that I think the journey to being a better mom, being a better leader, taking better care of yourself is knowing yourself. So whatever you can do to become more self-aware, to connect more deeply to your core is going to pay dividends in all of those other areas.
Nice. I love it. I think those are wise words. Well, thank you again, Erin, for coming on. And listeners, make sure you guys follow the show notes below. All her information where you can connect with her will be down below. And make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast and share it. And become a Patreon for as little as 99 cents a month. There's cool prizes involved with that. So, it's pretty cool. Well, thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Well, thank you. This has been so fun. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. All right, you guys.
Hey peeps, while we're taking a quick break from the podcast episode, my question to you is, have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? Well, I had that same question, and I have an answer for that. So when I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions. Too many questions to count. How do I record an episode, for example? How do I get my show into all the apps that people like to listen to, like Google, Spotify, all those places? How do I make money from this podcast? I think that's most of the goal for most people. The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free. I'm going to say that one more time. 100% free. And ridiculously easy to use. And now Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. This means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. I love Anchor so much. It's so easy. I can use it from my mobile phone, or I can actually use it from my desktop computer. It's perfect for those conversations on the go or those last minute scheduling podcast episodes with guests. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast and make money by doing it, go to anchor.fm/start. Again, that's anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to listen to your podcast episodes. Back to the show. Hey, before you go, I just want to say thank you for tuning in today's episode. And also, if you haven't already, like and subscribe, and make sure you comment and leave a rating for the podcast. Have a good one, you guys.